tifu by inquiring as to why a student was refusing to do work. To preface, this happened earlier this week, but I finally got smacked with the fallout this morning. I'm a high school teacher. This is my second year on the other side of the classroom, and as many of you current high school students are aware, COVID has made the classroom environment quite a bit different than it's been in the past. Everything is pretty hectic, the schools are painfully short-staffed, and people, students, and faculty are disappearing for weeks at a time. Half of the class is sitting in a Zoom room, while the other half sits in front of me. It's kind of just disastrous. We're in our 8th week of the full semester now. Weather's getting nominally colder, flu season is about, and morale is generally pretty low. Monday morning of this week I got a call from administration an hour before I was slated to be in class. Mr. X has decided not to return to the school and terminated his contract this morning. We don't have a replacement and our substitute list is lacking. I know you only have one prep period, but would you be willing to give it up until we can find a replacement and act as a stand-in for that hour? Unenthusiastic, but wanting to establish myself as a source of reliability at the school where, again, I'm only in my second year. I begrudgingly agree. We're a 7th 12th school, so we cater to middle and high school. I teach 9th and 12th grade literature/English and history. The class I'm standing in for, 7th grade social studies. Now there's a reason I chose high school as my field. Teenagers are obstinate, yes, but generally respond better to authority simply because they're mature enough to understand consequences. Middle school is a weird place emotionally and mentally. The development ranges from truly children to effective adults. It's a confusing amalgam of maturity, and one I never prepared to deal with. So onto the fudge-oop, I guess. Monday morning I come in, pound my coffee, make it through my 0th and 1st hour classes, and now it's time for what should be my prep period. I gather my things, lock my classroom door, stop by the teacher's lounge for another cup of coffee, and make my way out of the building and across to the campus to the middle school hall. I'm promptly greeted at the front door by the middle school director, a kindly old woman. W. Howlett. I've had nothing but pleasant interactions with Mr. Devil. Thank you so much for giving up your hour of solace to stand in. You have no idea how helpful this is. To which I offer some semi-genuine reply with as much enthusiasm as I can offer. I ask about prepared notes and lesson plans, and I'm told that everything I'll need is in a binder on the teacher's desk. No problem. I've subbed 4 classes before during my tutelage in college. I can handle this. I get into class, take a look at the lesson outlined for the day in the lesson plan, set my things down, and the bell rings and flood the students. A small class of only about 13, and no Zoom students this hour, so a relievingly light class load. I introduce myself as Mr. Devil, and a couple of the students start whispering to one another. After a moment of this, and after taking attendance, I ask the 2 boys in the back, very pointedly, about what's so interesting that they have yet to acknowledge their own names in the roll call. You're the English teacher in the high school, right? One of them, yes. My big sister says you're a real dick. I'm taken aback at this point. My reputation with my students has always been positive, save for a couple of students. W. Howlett are obviously checked out and waiting to turn 18, so they can pick up a crap job somewhere and smoke pot in their apartment without their parents nagging down their neck. W. Howlett don't appreciate any attempts at instilling some discipline. Not to let that set the mood of the classroom. I respond with I run a tight ship, and in my classroom, work gets done. I have little tolerance for nonsense, and if that makes me so unbearable, then so be it. This seemed to satisfy the student, and I followed up by expressing that language of that sort won't be tolerated either. The bell rings to signal the beginning of class, and I hand out the worksheets the students are meant to be working on that day. We participate in a group activity meant to be directly relatable to the topics at hand, and I turn them over to themselves to finish the worksheet, allowing them to chatter quietly at the same time. Everything's going fine for a little, while there are a couple of instances where I have to rein in the volume or remind students to stay focused. But there's this one student, one of the 2 from earlier. It's not the one that insinuated his older sister thinks I'm a real dick, but the recipient of such whispering. I notice that 10 or 12 minutes into the activity, and not a single word, not even a name, is on the paper. All I've seen of this student the entirety of class time is conversation of Minecraft and a YouTuber that modded the hardest Minecraft run ever. I stop by the table, point to the sheet, and remind the student firmly that this is due at the end of class and a failure to return a completed sheet will result in a 0. He gives me a sullen look and places his pencil to paper. I make another round offering assistance to a couple of other students asking for it, offer another reminder to keep the voices at an appropriate level, and return to this student's desk once again. Talking is occurring and no work is being done. I place my hand on the sheet, point to the empty name slot, and say something along the lines of at least pretend to be trying to get work done. You can chat about Minecraft for 15 minutes, but can't be bothered to put your name on your paper and continue checking other students' work. As I walk away, I see the student slump in his chair and start to pout. I chalked it up to moodiness, resulting in him throwing a fit. How wrong I was. Exchanges much like this happened 2 more times over the course of the hour, him sitting there doing no work, and me stating to him that he needs to start reading the prompt and writing the responses. At this point there's about 15 minutes left in class. The activity should have taken no more than 10 or 15 of the allotted 30 minutes. Most of the students have turned in their work and are either reading quietly, working on other stuff, or chatting in a respectful volume to let others finish. 10 minutes left in class. The one student still doesn't have a thing on his page and is back to talking about his game of Among Us last night. I'm fed up and about to go and speak with him when our middle school paraprofessional walks through the door. For those of you who don't know, a parapro is a certified classroom assistant, usually meant to aid in classroom prep or help students who struggle with certain concepts and can't keep up with the rest of the class. She looks at me and says, "I'm so sorry I'm late. My alarm didn't go off this morning and I just got here. Has everything been okay?" I was a little surprised, told her it was all well and good, and asked why she was there. A classroom usually doesn't get assigned a parapro unless there's a student that needs one. "Oh, did nobody tell you?" She leans in and whispers, "A student in the back there. He's effectively illiterate. He can't read or write without major assistance." I figured someone would have said something. My eyes shift to the student in the back. The young man who has yet to so much as put his name on the paper. The young man who, not 20 minutes ago, was questioned as to why he hasn't bothered to so much as put his name on the paper. The young man who had effectively been singling out for not reading or writing anything on the paper. I felt my heart sink. I reflected on everything I said to the student, as I would to any other student, and I realized what I had done. The student wasn't pouting because he was angry with being told to focus on a worksheet. He was pouting because someone kept insisting he do it when he outright was completely unable to do so. Nobody fucking told me. Noon warned me. We don't keep a list of developmentally disabled students or something. The parapro was supposed to do that, and she wasn't there to. So I spent an hour effectively picking on the illiterate kid without a clue in the world. The class ended. I slinked back off to my homeroom class, and I sat there, eyes to the floor, until my next class rolled, and I went through the rest of my day sullen and stricken with personal guilt. I felt terrible. I got off work that night and went straight to the local bar, grabbed a drink, sat out back on the patio, and started slugging down rum. No more than a few moments later, one of my coworkers wanders in. As is standard form, we all drink at the same watering hole, and, well, we all drink. Take it from me, kids, most of your teachers are functioning alcoholics. Just comes with the territory. He wanders over and asks me what's up. I relay everything to him, and he responds with, "Oh, that's what the school director wanted to talk to you about." My eyes widen. I go into full panic mode. I slug down the last of my drink and walk my happy ass home in the cold dark night. 2 days passed, and I waited for that dreaded call, or the email that would summon me to my disciplinary hearing. I lost sleep. I felt so ridiculously guilty it was almost physically painful, and I just wanted it to be over. This morning I got to class. I set my stuff up, lock my classroom door, and wander to the teacher's lounge for my morning cup of coffee. I open the door and I see standing there, alone. My director locks eyes with me, and I immediately shoot mine to the floor. I'm still living in guilt and embarrassment, the likes I haven't felt since the day I tripped and fell flat on my face at my own middle school graduation in front of 400 people. I shuffle over to the coffee pot and she says, "Cleanly my office 5 minutes." I comply and work myself up. For my inevitable chewing out, I wander to her office door and contemplate just walking away, getting in my car and skipping town. But alas, I do not flee. I raise my fist, rap it against the laminated wood, and she insists I come in. I find myself a seat in front of her, opposite her desk, and sit, anxious and terrified. So, student, what happened? I relay everything from my perspective to the clearest of my recollection. I acknowledge that I had absolutely no indication, that nobody had said anything to me, that my parapro was absent, and that I've lost sleep over the guilt. She looks me dead in the eye and says, "Alright, now that I've heard your side, it's time we discuss your employment here at school." And my heart sinks. It's over 4 years of college and I lose my job in year 2. And much to my chagrin, she starts laughing, quiet and stifled at first, but it quickly grows into loud, raucous laughter. I'm confused and terrified. She stops abruptly, looks me dead in the eye and says, and I will never forget these words, "Seriously, devil, picking on the fucking handicapped kid, how low can you sink?" And she says it with the most devilish grin I'd ever been privy to. My heart sinks, and then recovers. Realizing she's teasing, she explains that the student had a history in elementary school of being aware of his deficiencies and milking them for all he can to avoid doing any actual work. She continues to explain that the student understands that when he puts on a pouting demeanor, he receives pity instead of punishment. And that I had no way of knowing how loath was, or what his history was like. She thanks me for maintaining a proper classroom environment and expecting the same amount of competence from every student as the assignment was, so basically probably could have fumbled his way through it had he tried. At the end of the meeting, I was told I'd be taking over the 7th grade class on my prep every day until a replacement was found, if I felt comfortable returning, and was given the number 42 substitute parapros in the event that this occurred again. I accepted, and she and I get a solid chuckle out of the whole situation at the end of it all. She asked if I felt like tripping the kid with crutches too. I have a feeling I'm not living this down for a while. TL. Doctor stood in for a 7th grade classroom, inadvertently singled out the handicapped kid, thought I lost my job. Now I'm just known as the guy that wants to pick on the developmentally disabled. Please end my life. Mr. Fanning? Question mark? Mayo. Don't sweat it. I have epilepsy, and I was yelled at in front of the class during a presentation because I had a small seizure in front of the class and the teacher didn't know. You definitely gave the kid a good story, but he probably has hundreds exactly like it. As someone that's been that kid, please don't feel bad. You didn't know, and he definitely knew what he was doing. I'm not Mr. Fanning, but my heart goes out to both of you. What I found interesting was that none of the students mentioned to you the situation regarding that kid. When I was in high school, we had a student Howlett was quite erratic and used to jump around. He had a teacher in the school Howlett used to come and check up him. Now usually some substitutes come in and we end up explaining that the student has some behavioral or mentally deficiency. I don't actually know what he has, so I won't assume me, and that usually clears things up. I was thinking the same thing. My daughter is in 4th grade, and if a substitute even mispronounces a name, the rest of the class jumps in to correct the sub. I can't believe not a single student mentioned that he needed help. I was one of those kids Howlett insisted he couldn't do things that I actually could do. I absolutely hated being praised for mediocrity. But it was lavished onto me anytime I did anything basic, because they assumed I was incapable, but was really just incredibly stubborn and didn't want to be told what to do. At one point, I got fed up with it, and went all out on an English paper. I received an F, and was called in after school to explain why I had cheated on my essay. It would have been nice to have been assumed to be competent once in a while. But in my childhood stubbornness I continued to force the special education department to drag me by the hand through most of my education. I still don't really understand why I did it, but it's entirely possible that your approach would have actually been beneficial to that student. I felt a pain when I read the word paraprofessional. I'm a music teacher. Each day I'm at a different elementary school teaching TK 2nd grade. In one of my 1st grade classes, there was one student that was acting out. so I sent her to her classroom teacher after a couple warnings. Her para was not present, and she showed no signs of a disability, so I was completely unaware of the situation. I checked my email during recess and saw a very passive-aggressive message from the teacher explaining that she's on the autism spectrum and that her para would handle any misbehavior. I understood her frustration, but at the same time, how was I supposed to know? Kudos to your boss for being so understanding of the situation, though. How is this kid playing things like Among Us if he can't read or write? How is he reading what his tasks are? How is he reading the instructions for tasks, i.e. things like select anomaly on the medbay sample, too fast, try again on card swipe, or any other direction the tasks give? How is he reading the chat? How is he typing in the chat? I'm not doubting your story, I'm doubting his. That kid's definitely milking it. Maybe even Marizo than the school director even knows. It might be a lie, but I think Among Us is perfectly playable without really being able to read well. You can use the map to see where the tasks are instead of reading the task list. You can look at it content to see how to do the tasks if the written prompts are confusing. You can exclusively play voice chat games, etc. Not impossible. Not your fudge buddy. For exactly this reason, a good school insists on a class profile for every class, with all issues like this clearly laid out, special needs, language issues, etc. They either don't have them, incompetent, or they didn't give you access, incompetent, not your fault, and that employment joke was a realist move by them. This kind of thing happens to every teacher at least once. If I were you, I would find him and apologize. Nothing big. Just get him alone and be like, hey, sorry about the other day. Creating relationships with students is half the battle to getting them to do things, especially those students who are lot struck, because they tend to have many negative contacts with teachers. You could be the one for whom he will do whatever you ask. As a high school English and social studies teacher, Harlot just got back into subbing after 2 years out of the classroom. This was riveting and painful. I felt every step of this with you. May you live it down sooner rather than later. Dare. The real tifu was agreeing to take over the class until they found a replacement. Now they don't need to worry about finding a replacement because the class is covered. Are they paying you anything to cover it? If not, they are also saving money by keeping you there. Enjoy having 0 prep periods for the remainder of the year. Oh, I'm sorry it's taking so long to find a replacement, Mr. Devil. It's just so hard to find people this year. But if you can just hang in there, I'm sure we'll have someone in a couple of weeks. We really appreciate the help. And then when the budget gets cut because of low attendance due to pandemic related issues and they cut staff, they will still let you go. Not quite sure why an illiterate kid would be in social studies. Shouldn't they be learning the missing skills in a special class? Also, doesn't hurt to pipe up and mention your circumstances. TBH, I wouldn't call this a tifu personally. Just a whole bunch of people bad at communicating. The kids with special needs typically work on reading during reading and learn content areas, social studies, science during content classes. Ideally, the paraprofessional would support the instruction during content classes. These kids are still entitled to learn a full curriculum such as history, citizenship, life science, health. They have to be present in order to get the info. Makes sense. I never came across any of them during my high school, so I assumed we had them all be taught the full curriculum in the special ed classes. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.